Your life is happening inside a piece of glass you can't touch. Not metaphorically, functionally. You walk through the day like an eye, absorbing color, motion, faces, danger, opportunity, everything. And the one thing you never actually see is the eye itself. The instrument doing the seeing stays invisible, not because it's hidden, but because it's the condition for anything to appear at all. That's what transparency of experience means. Consciousness doesn't show up in front of you like an object on a table. It shows up as the table, as the room, as the feeling that this is reality. It's a window that refuses to appear as a window. You don't look at your mind, you look through it. And if you live inside a window you can't see, you start mistaking the smudges for the world. Here's a tiny scene you already know. You're on your phone, scrolling. A headline hits like a dart. Your chest tightens, your thumb speeds up. Your brain starts building a courtroom in a half-second. Evidence, motives, villains, allies. You feel like you're seeing clearly, like you're just reacting to what's obvious. But what if that tightness wasn't truth? What if it was your window tint reacting to light? You don't experience your bias as bias, you experience it as vision. That's the first trap. Because subjectivity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm your personal filter. I'll be editing this reality in real time." No. It behaves like oxygen, everywhere, silent and only noticeable when it's gone. So when people say, "I know myself," what they usually mean is, "I'm familiar with the stories my mind tells me about itself." That's not the same thing. Introspection feels like a flashlight you point inward. But most of the time it's a mirror you hold up, and the mirror only reflects what it's built to reflect. Psychology has a name for one part of this, the introspection illusion. It's the tendency to believe you have direct access to the causes of your thoughts and actions, while other people are the ones who are biased, emotional, manipulated, irrational. You can see their strings, yours feel like bones. And the reason it feels that way isn't because you're special. It's because the system is designed to hide its own machinery. Think about it. If your mind showed you every single assumption it used to interpret a sentence, every shortcut it took to label a stranger as safe or threat, every little emotional bribe it offered to keep you consistent, you'd never make it through breakfast. So consciousness does something efficient and terrifying. It gives you the result, not the process. It hands you a finished painting and lets you forget there was a painter. That's why you can stare straight at your own experience and still miss what's controlling it. The lens doesn't show itself. The eye doesn't enter its own field of vision. You're in a meeting. Someone makes a suggestion. You immediately feel a quiet resistance, so small you almost don't notice. You don't think, "I dislike this because it threatens my status." You don't think, "This person reminds me of someone I learned to distrust." You think, "That won't work." It arrives already dressed as logic. Your mind is a lawyer wearing a lab coat. And introspection is often just the lawyer interviewing himself. You ask, "Why did I react like that?" And the mind answers, "Because it was reasonable." It hands you a story that protects your self-image, preserves your sense of being the main character who makes sense. The narrative self, the part of you that stitches moments into a coherent identity, doesn't exist to be accurate. It exists to be stable. A stable story keeps you functioning. It keeps you from turning into a panicked swarm of contradictions. But stability comes with a price. It turns uncertainty into certainty and it hides the edits. This is where philosophy of mind gets uncomfortable. We like to imagine consciousness as a spotlight, a clean beam of awareness that can illuminate anything, including itself. But what if consciousness is more like a screen? You don't see the pixels. You see the image. The pixels are working so perfectly you forget they exist. So when you look inward, you're not stepping outside the system to inspect it. You're asking the system to describe itself from inside itself. That's like asking a dream to prove it's a dream while you're still dreaming. It will happily generate evidence, and it will all feel convincing. This is why people can be sincerely wrong about themselves. Not fake, not pretending, not manipulative. Sincerely wrong. Because the experience of being right is not a certificate of truth. It's just a sensation. A warm stamp your nervous system applies when the pieces fit the story you already live in. And that story is built on blind spots. Blind spots aren't just missing information. They're missing awareness that you're missing information. That's the cruel part. It's not a hole you can see. It's a hole you step around and then swear the floor is complete. Your own madness, Let's use a safer word. Your own distortions don't feel like distortions. They feel like the way things are. If you've ever watched someone else spiral into a bizarre certainty, some emotional obsession, some irrational grudge, some narrative where everyone is against them, you can see the pattern from the outside. You can feel the gravity of their tunnel vision. From the inside, it feels like clarity. That's the transparency. The mind isn't a thing you observe. It's the observing, so its shape is hidden by its function. Now add modern life. We live in an era where your attention is rented by the minute. Your reality is fed to you in rectangles. Your nervous system is constantly being poked by alerts, likes, ranking systems, performance reviews, subtle social scoring. And then we tell people, just introspect, just be self-aware. That's like telling someone in a smoke-filled room, just look carefully and you'll see clearly. The room is still full of smoke, and you are breathing it while you search. Introspection can be useful, but it's unreliable in a specific way. It confuses access with accuracy. You can access your feelings, you can access your thoughts, you can access the story you're telling yourself. But the causes, the hidden motivations, the preloaded assumptions, the biases that decide what counts as evidence, those are mostly underground. Freud had his own vocabulary for this, though you don't need his whole architecture to get the point. The mind protects itself. It hides the embarrassing motives behind respectable reasons, not because you're evil, because you're human, and you want to keep living with yourself. Jung pushed it in another direction. You carry a shadow, parts of you that don't fit the identity you advertise even to yourself, and because you can't stand to see them, you project them outward. You spot them everywhere in other people. You become a detector for the thing you refuse to admit is in you. Nietzsche would smirk at this and say you're just rationalizing after the fact, calling your instincts principles so you can feel noble about your impulses. Different frames, same wound. The mind is not an honest narrator, it's an identity manager. And introspection is the identity manager explaining itself. So when you sit alone, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure yourself out, you might be doing something closer to public relations than investigation. You're on a dating app, swiping like you're sorting humans into folders. You tell yourself you have a type. You think you're being selective, discerning, mature. But beneath that, there's a quieter algorithm. Attachment patterns, old emotional bruises, fear of being seen too closely, the craving for validation without vulnerability. And when you choose someone, it feels like preference. It might be a coping strategy, wearing perfume. You can introspect all night and still never find that layer, because the layer isn't made of words. It's made of nervous system history. It's made of what your body learned long before you could narrate it. Your mind is a museum with a gift shop. Introspection walks you through the exhibit, the curated displays labeled my values, my personality, my beliefs. Then you exit through the gift shop where you buy a souvenir explanation for why you are the way you are. Meanwhile, the basement, where the building's pipes, wiring and leaks are, remains locked. And the wild part? The mind will insist the museum is the whole building. That's the twist. Here it is, the trapdoor. You don't just fail to see your own window. You defend the window's invisibility. Because if you ever saw the window as a window, you'd also have to admit something that shakes the spine. Your certainty has a source, and the source is not always truth. It might be comfort. It might be status. It might be fear. It might be habit. It might be the need to feel consistent. Most people don't want self-knowledge. They want self-justification. They want a reason that keeps them innocent in their own story. So the mind offers a deal. I'll keep the lens transparent. You keep calling your perspective reality, and you sign it daily. This is why arguing rarely changes anyone. You can't logic someone out of a lens they can't see. If the lens is invisible, the person thinks you're attacking the world, not their filter. It's also why you can be wildly intelligent and still blind. Intelligence is a powerful engine. If the steering wheel is bent, you just crash faster, with better vocabulary. So what do you do with this? You can't see your consciousness the way you see a chair. The eye still won't see itself directly, but you can learn to detect it indirectly, like noticing wind by watching trees move. You stop treating introspection like a judge and start treating it like a witness. A witness can report what happened in the room. A witness is often terrible at explaining why it happened. Here are a few exits. Not motivational, strategic. First shift, stop asking why and start asking what. When you ask, why did I do that? Your mind jumps into story mode. It produces a clean, flattering explanation. It's a novelist on a deadline. Instead ask, what happened right before I felt that? What sensation showed up first? What did I avoid? What did I crave? What is harder to romanticize. It forces you to look at data instead of mythology. It's like switching from reading your own autobiography to checking the security camera footage. Second shift, outsource your blind spots to friction. Since you can't reliably spot the lens from inside it, you build environments that reveal it. If you always feel too busy for deep work, don't introspect for 3 hours about motivation. Change the room, lock the phone away, put the distraction behind a wall. See what the mind does when it can't get its usual sugar. Your patterns will show themselves under constraint. The lens becomes visible when it hits resistance. This is why commitment devices work, not because they make you disciplined, but because they expose what you are actually doing. The mind hates being cornered, and in that hatred it reveals itself. Third shift, treat other people as mirrors, not enemies. This is dangerous because it hurts the ego, but it's the closest thing to seeing your own eye. Notice what you repeatedly accuse people of. Notice what type of person always irritates you. Notice what you can't tolerate without launching into moral language. That irritation is often your shadow knocking from inside the wall. It doesn't mean the other person is innocent. It means your reaction has extra fuel. And extra fuel usually comes from your own basement. A small, practical version. When you feel certain contempt, delay the verdict. Don't suppress it, study it. Ask, what identity of mine feels threatened right now? What am I trying to prove by feeling this? Again, what, not why. And one more shift, because this is the one people skip. Build a habit of being wrong on purpose in small, safe ways, not self-humiliation, calibration. Say out loud, casually, I might be missing something, not as a performance, as a muscle. Because the ability to hold uncertainty is the closest thing to stepping back from the window. The mind resists this because certainty feels like control, but certainty is often just anxiety wearing armor. The goal isn't to become perfectly self-aware. That's a fantasy sold by productivity culture and therapy speak turned into merch. The goal is to become less hypnotized by your first-person story. To remember, the feeling of obviousness is not evidence. Your consciousness is transparent. You will always look through it. But you can learn to see its fingerprints, the speed of your judgments, the repeat of your patterns, the emotional bribes, the way your body flinches before your brain explains. And when you start noticing those fingerprints, something strange happens. Reality gets bigger, not easier, bigger, because you stop confusing your window for the sky. So here's the question that should sit with you like a quiet animal in the room. If your mind is the glass you're looking through, what's one obvious truth you've been defending that might actually be a smudge?